Thank you very much, Vladimir. Good morning, colleagues. I'm glad to see all of you, even in this electronic form. It is delightful to welcome you. Before we start the first part of our webinar, which is devoted to national systems, I would like to give you some very interesting statistical data which may be applicable to our today's discussion. Look, according to the US data, the global revenues from the commercial use of satellites in 2019 were $336 billion US. This is more than in the previous year. Over the last decade, the revenues have grown by 77.8%. So this is it has practically doubled. The main portion is accounted for by space products and services. Last year, the sales in this segment was $217 billion, and over the year, this segment has grown. Over the last decade, it has more than doubled. In 2010, it was only $102 billion US. The volume of the number of manufactured satellites has become fewer. During the first 3 quarters of 2020, the data is not quite reliable, but the pandemic has taken a toll on aviation, on maritime shipping, but to a lesser extent, it affected the corporate sector. Russian experts note that in 2019, in the fixed satellite services segment, it is planned that the reduction in this year will be 4.5%, but starting from 2022, growth is projected. By the year 2029, it will take us to $19.5 billion US. Most of that will be accounted for by the data market. In the context of these figures, we have formulated several questions to you. If you answer them, we would like to have you to answer these questions, defining your position. What is, in your opinion, is the impetus which can stimulate, encourage further growth of satellite constellations? What is the role of government programs in the maintenance and operation of satellite systems? How can GSO satellite systems influence the market? Is it cooperation or competition? What is your opinion? Against the background of the pandemic, against the background of this decrease in market, are national satellite systems becoming more attractive? And I'm going to give you a presentation on behalf of RSCC, and in my presentation, I would like to tell you how Russia tackles this task and how our company takes into account the principal global trends that have appeared over the last several years. I would like to start my presentation, and if you find it necessary, you will ask questions in writing and orally. Vladimir, presentation, please. Thank you. Once again, digital technologies help us give any presentations we like in any format. Next slide. The satellite constellation of our company is the largest of the constellations of operators participating in Sputnik. Today, RSCC has 10 satellites. In the coming months, it is planned to increase our constellation by 2 new satellites, which are now at the stage of orbit raising. I will touch upon several fundamental aspects of the development of the modern satellite industry and the areas of RSCC's business, which will have an impact on the development of the Russian satellite communications industry as a whole. I will describe the results of the development of our own value-added services in the field of broadcasting and communications. I will start with an important event. On July 31st this year, 2 new Express 80 and 103 communications and broadcasting satellites were launched, which are to be placed in service in January and February next year. Next year, it is planned to launch and place in service 2 more satellites, Express AMU-3 and AMU-7. A new AMU-4 satellite is underway. By the end of 2021, our constellation will include 13 satellites. In addition to the joyful moments related to the launch of new satellites, we also suffered some losses. I would like to separately develop on the example of close international cooperation during the pandemic, which made it possible to eliminate the consequences of an accident. In March, there was a failure in the operation of the thermal control system of the Express AM6 satellite. As a result, the Ka-band transponder had to be shut down. At the time of the shutdown, more than 5,500 stations were operating in the network. RSCC, together with Eutelsat and Hughes, carried out a huge work to transfer customers to alternative satellites. We worked in very tense conditions. Significant difference in time zones between Russia, the United States, and Europe, self-isolation, quarantine, but RSCC transferred customers simultaneously to 3 of its Express series satellites in different orbital slots. Owing to coordinated actions of RSCC and foreign colleagues, it was possible to keep and transfer most of the subscriber base. Today, the number of active stations connected to the system of high-speed access based on RSCC satellites exceeds 18,000. I would like to express my gratitude to Eutelsat and Hughes, who have done literally a marvelous job. A discussion of the current state of the satellite industry is impossible without assessing the impact of COVID-19 on the entire chain of satellite communications. The pandemic has drawn the line between before and after. Until the end of 2019, operators considered multi-option models for satisfying the end user demand and worked mainly according to the classic model of a retailer built in partnerships with second-tier operators. By the fall, it became that civil, commercial, military, other sectors are mobile, unstable, and show very different dynamics of development. From slow growth in demand to stagnation of several market segments, almost all modern solutions are focused on a specific customer. At the center is the creation of value for consumed products and services and the payback of projects of a specific customer. This means that the industry is moving from simply leasing resources to managing services, that is, from market offerings of capacity at the lowest cost to generating processes that create the most value, the highest value. The most affected by the pandemic are the satellite industry, which manufacture and supply satellites. The investment flight did not affect adjacent digital technologies, telemedicine, e-commerce, distance learning, robotics, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and fintech. For many companies, the virtual format has become an opportunity to expand the scale of their events. During the pandemic and the outflow of private investors, the role of public investment, the government investment, has increased, which made it possible to keep jobs and ensure the development of long-term projects. In this year, government tenders attracted long-term investments, but so far, no more than just $5 billion, which is several times less than in the period before the pandemic. This year, the only investment drivers were projects with end customers. Customers are becoming more and more demanding, and demand from the operator a turnkey service and round-the-clock uninterrupted operation of services is becoming a key factor for the success of any company. Industry experts know that in the next 2 years, the role of the government as the customer will increase. An operator's success and its stability will depend on the skills of effective interaction in the government commercial sector chain and the integration of cloud technologies into the satellite ecosystem through the change in the face of ground infrastructure, integration into the 5G segment, IoT, and others. We are talking about the future for the integration of LEO, MEO, HEO, and GSO with hybrid solutions for the benefit of civilian and military customers. Satellite communications using new satellites and the integration of new orbits makes it possible to transmit a signal at a speed comparable to fiber optic, create a cloud storage and data transmission system, which is not possible if you use only GSO satellites. This completely changed our traditional understanding of the commercial operation and configuration of satellite services. Point is that the figure belongs to hybrid systems that complement each other. A few words about how RSCC develops and plans its constellation. First, evolution of the HTS segment. Most of the satellites ordered in the last year for GSO are HTS or hybrid satellites, having traditional wide beams to increase capacity and reduce the size of subscriber terminals. We use the HTS payload. Commercial testing of technologies with software-defined payloads begins. This helps you dynamically configure the operating frequencies of transponders and coverage areas directly in orbit during the operation of any satellite. RSCC is studying this topic. Together with Intersputnik, we are studying the possibility of building a space satellite with a flexible payload in order to jointly provide services. I think that Grigory Baitsev will give you more details about these projects. Another trend is multi-satellite systems in low circular orbits. Recently, there has been a new surge of interest in satellite systems in low circular orbits. We are talking about satellite systems operating within the fixed satellite service in the KU and KA band, OneWeb, Starlink, SpaceX. They must provide global coverage. Almost all of these projects are aimed at providing, in the first place, mass broadband access to all mankind. Such systems with satellite in low orbits have advantages over other systems. Significantly less latency, comparable to terrestrial networks, and better radio link power. Based on this, systems with satellites in low orbits can provide services that no other system can implement. These are services related to real-time applications. However, there are a number of controversial issues regarding communication systems in such orbits. For example, a low Earth system forms a global service area in which more than 70% of the surface of the Earth is occupied by seas and oceans, and 75% of time, the satellites serve unpopulated areas, which is extremely disadvantageous from a commercial viewpoint. It is also necessary to take into account that the lifetime of such satellites is limited to 5 to 7 years. Annually, it is necessary to launch 15 to 20% of new satellites to replace the old ones. Another drawback of low-flying satellites is the inability to serve the equatorial regions due to interference into geostationary systems, which, according to the radio regulations, have an unconditional priority in the use of radio frequencies. This issue remains unresolved. Many technical issues that require solution for the successful operation of commercial systems in low orbits are also relevant, germane to communication systems in high orbits. RSCC supports the work of a number of companies developing small-sized satellite terminals with low cost for working with express RV system. Mobility. It is clear that demand for satellite broadband services is associated with the mobile market, maritime, aviation, and road transport. If you look at the financial statements of operators before the pandemic, this segment showed the highest growth rates. So far, in the structure of the company's income, this business area doesn't exceed 10%, but relative indicators show double-digit annual growth. RSCC is very successful developing this area. Of course, the pandemic affected the air and sea transport, but none of the existing operators in the segment has given up. The subsegment of fixed satellite communications on mobile platforms continues to develop dynamically. That is cargo, transport, fishing, road transport. Express AMU-3, planned for launch in 2021, has broadband high-powered transponders, and the satellite is specially built to provide communications with small antennas, less than a meter, which can be used for communications on mobile units. Internet of Things. The development of the IoT topic will significantly affect the configuration of mobile telecoms as a whole. In addition to a slew of startups planning to launch various LEO systems aimed at providing services in the IoT segment, major players, larger players also pay attention to this market. In Russia, the implementation of this business area is envisaged within the framework of the Marathon IoT multi-satellite system, which is part of the Sphere sub-program developed by Roscosmos. Our company's infrastructure can potentially be used to accommodate the ground segment of the system. RSCC is considering the possibility of participating in a number of international projects for the experimental development of satellite IoT technologies. It is absolutely unimportant for a user of communication services to know what technology is used to access the internet or make a voice call. The task of interfacing satellite networks with terrestrial networks is coming to the fore. The 5G ecosystem is becoming the backbone of the infrastructure for next-generation communication broadcast networks, where in addition to people, billions of smart devices will interact, creating services for Industry 4.0, from autonomous operation of transport to traffic generation by artificial intelligence. Now, a standard is being developed for 5G networks. The satellite component for the first time can be integrated into the radio access network at the standard level. This will help integrate satellite networks with fifth-generation cellular networks. The combination of global satellite coverage and terrestrial networks will create a next-generation communications infrastructure. It is these solutions for the development of the digital economy that are incorporated in the new spacecraft satellites operated by RSCC. I think that Mr. Strelets will give us more details. In the period up to 2030, RSCC plans to build, launch, and place in service 10 new satellites, Express AMU geostationary satellites. These projects will increase the number of high-tech, modern, Russian-made satellites in GSO and expand the capabilities of the orbital constellation. The development and establishment of a new system of satellite communications with satellites in high elliptical orbit Express RV is also planned. The Express RV project will contribute to the development of scientific and technological progress. It is expected that the comparatively new Russian market for satellite communications broadcasting on mobile units, shared use units, will be the main one in the commercial segment. That is, airplanes, ships, long-distance trains, intercity buses, and freight transport. The Express RV system will provide high angles, high elevation of the Earth stations operating. This is the principal condition for reliable satellite communications on the move, taking into account difficult terrain, urban development, and vegetation. Also, the capability of the system will be used to establish communications in the northern regions and the entire Arctic zone. This slide shows our plans associated with the launches of new satellites. You can see that shortly we have quite serious plans. A total of, according to the Satellite Industry Association, a total of 386 satellites were launched last year, 129 of which are commercial satellites. The global sales were 271 billion. This is 2% lower than in 2018. The decline followed after several years of growth. It is associated with a decrease in world prices for the production and launch of satellites, minus 35% and 20% respectively. At the same time, the shares of satellite communication and broadcasting is 41%. Now some data about RSCC financials. Our revenues in 2019 amounted to 12.3 billion rubles. This year it is planned that we'll be able to keep this level despite the negative situation. Taking into account the recession in the global, on the global market and well as the pandemic, this might be a very good result. The share of revenues from value-added services increased from 13% in 2018 to 15% last year. The percentage of spacecraft utilization by RSCC increased from 72% in 2018 to 81% last year. The pandemic has had a powerful impact on the satellite and broadcasting industry. The pace of most projects has slowed down. The deadlines have significantly shifted due to the almost complete cancellation of air service around the world. Some market segments have been hit harder than others. For example, internet access on board passenger aircraft. Quite a few companies have to adjust their plans and investment programs for the coming years, and there's a decline in overall business activity. In general, the satellite communications industry will take about at least 3 years to return to market volumes of 2019. Last year, RSCC continued working in foreign markets. We offer services in 58 countries on 4 continents. The share of RSCC revenues from international sales exceeds 51%. Among the company's foreign customers are operators of backbone networks, cellular operators, internet providers, VSAT operators, international and regional organizations, television companies, media holdings, and SNTV platforms, oil and gas companies, banks, and supermarkets. We work with everyone. Our satellites are used to provide backbone, cellular backhaul services, and internet access in African countries close to the equator, such as Angola, Nigeria, Burkina Faso. Last year, our customers have significantly increased their utilization. We are drawing more users. In particular, cooperation agreement was signed with a Thai satellite operator, with Thaicom, on the joint provision of broadband services on ships. We are going to arrange roaming between maritime satellite networks, providing seamless coverage of trade routes between Europe and Southeast Asia. The pandemic has slowed down this process, but we see prospects for regional satellite operators. Since 2009, RSCC has been developing and launching new services. Exactly 10 years ago, RSCC began providing satellite communication services in the VSAT network for fixed and mobile objects. Our first customers were fishing vessels in the Far East. Today, almost all islands in Russia fall into the service area of the VSAT network. Depending on weather conditions and terrain, communication can be provided up to 80 degrees north latitude. The pandemic adjusted our plans. In the first half of 2020, compared to the previous year, the number of offshore facilities increased by 10%. The growth in traffic from mobile offshore facilities allows us to predict an increase in revenue by another 12% by the end of this year. RSCC occupies about a third of the Russian market for maritime VSAT services, with plans to increase this share to 50% by 2023. Last year, a VSAT network based on domestic E-Star equipment was put into operation. Today, it is the network with the largest service area, covering the territory of Russia, Europe, and Latin America, as well as seas around Latin America, the Caribbean, eastern and southeastern coasts of the United States, Africa, the middle, the Arctic Ocean, Atlantic, and Pacific Oceans. In addition to RSCC itself, several other operators work according to the VNO model. We are developing this network together with our customers and add a resource of third-party operators outside the range of sight of RSCC satellites. Many companies that have long and successfully provided services on mobile objects have been forced to minimize or even stop their business in connection with because of the pandemic. First of all, this affected companies that provide communication services on aircraft and cruise liners. Commercial maritime traffic has remained stable. We still consider these areas to be promising and continue developing new services for aviation, sea, rail, and road transport. Great hopes are pinned on the Express AMU-3 satellite. At the beginning of 2019, we joined the pilot project of unmanned navigation. Services at sea are in great demand. In last August, as part of the project, equipment was installed and configured on the ships of SOFCOM Flot. Now the first full-scale field tests of unmanned navigation systems are being conducted. Under this project, RSCC acts as a communications partner, providing satellite resources, and we also provide expert assistance in building communications networks. Few words about commercial television and radio broadcasting. RSCC is a service provider for the largest Russian DTH operators such as Tricolor, NTV Plus, and Orion Express. We also develop our own technological platform for broadcasters, whose customers have become almost all major media holdings in Russia. That is more than 160 TV channels. One of the areas of our activity is the delivery of commercial TV channels to cable networks. And in this segment, commercial distribution, DTO, we now occupy 40%. Despite the pandemic, we not only managed to retain our media customers, but even received some increase in TV channels. Some words about a new line of business. and unexpected results we obtained after the launch of our pilot project Satellite CDN. Last year, we actively looked for and tested solutions to ensure the delivery of OTT live video via satellite. In early 2020, we rolled out a prototype of the system on 2 partner cable TV networks. Our main task was to test the idea with real subscribers without large investments. The start of these tests coincided with the introduction of the quarantine. The role of the communications infrastructure for the delivery of content became especially noticeable during that period. It is understandable that during the lockdown, the amount of traffic consumed by subscribers multiplied. The problems with limiting the bandwidth and bitrate naturally did not affect satellite DVB networks, which, despite the growth of the subscriber base, were able to maintain the availability and high quality of broadcasting. This helped our DTH and DTO clients to successfully increase their portfolio of services throughout the quarantine period. Interestingly, RSCC partners received an unexpected benefit from the new service. Broadcasting was carried out without additional costs for paying for terrestrial inter-operator traffic. Of course, the size of this benefit was insignificant, but when scaling this technical solution, cable operators can achieve a significant economic advantage when optimizing their business. The implementation of IP-based technical solutions is the main growth area in the TV and radio broadcasting market. To reach a new target audience, we will continue working to build a vertically integrated technological platform on whose basis a system of end-to-end video transmission and broadband access is being shaped. In conclusion, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that RSCC is always open to new services and technologies. Our customers often require a wide range of value-added services, and we work together with partners to offer comprehensive full-scale services, and believe that this very line of business will be one of the growth drivers in the future until 2025. Thank you for listening.